I'm Tom Vasel.
And I'm Melody.
Welcome to Double Trouble. This is a new 2-year series where basically Melody and I are going to review games together. We say 2 years because in 2 years you go to college. And then we will never see her again. Maybe. Today we're taking a look at Vast the Crystal Caverns. Now this is a game that I had heard very little about before we went to Gen Con, and it was kind of the, hey, this is interesting. Now why is it interesting? Because if you look at Vast the Crystal Caverns, you see a knight, which is a female knight, that's a cool, fighting a dragon and goblins. That's not that unusual, I don't think, do you?
No,
well,
not at all.
But what made me attracted to this game was, you can be the knight, or you can be the dragon, or you can be the goblins. You can also be a thief, or you can be the cave. Yeah, the cave. The thing that the people are like walking around inside of. Very interesting and unique, and each character that you play is extremely different than the other ones. I'll kind of give you an overview of how it's played, and then we'll be back. Now, I'm not going to go over every rule in this game. What I'm going to do instead is show you how each of the players play. Now, at the beginning of the game, you don't have to play with all the players, and in fact, you may have less than 5 players, in which case some of the things will be automatic or won't be in the game. You have different variant cards. So, for example, Alone in the Dark you would play if there's no cave player. And the rule book tells you exactly how to play all the different combinations. Each player also comes with difficulty cards. So let's say you're playing the thief character. There's a normal difficulty on the thief character standard, but you can make it easier for the person who's playing the thief, or even harder. So if someone's better, or you think one of the options might be easier to play than others, you can use these cards to change things. So first we have the cave. Now this is the thing that attracts everybody to the cave, right? This is the fact that a player can play the cave is a big jump. So what the cave does, and each player has their own board that has different things that they keep track of, and each player has their own components. In fact, the cave has more components than anyone else, because when a new tile is discovered, the cave is going to take tiles. They're going to be able to look at the other sides of those tiles and place them around each edge of this. And whenever someone finds a new section of the cave, they're going to put them around those edges. Now sometimes there's walls here, so then the cave can put something like that. And if you're wondering what these are, that has to do with the goblins. That's the goblin tribes that are out there. But the cave has these out there. The cave is also on their turn going to be putting a treasure token on the board. And this treasure token is going to be attracting the thief and the knight to go get these. Treasure tokens also give the cave power. The cave is going to be pulling from a bag of tokens. So the cave has its own little bag of tokens, and the cave will be pulling these tokens based on how many crystals are on the board. Some of these provide crystals that will show up, and they're going to be pulling these tokens, and they can spend these tokens to do different things. Then here they can put out another treasure token, or here they can place a tile during the collapse, remove a tile instead, so they can put out extra tiles. And so there's different things that they can do once they spend these. And what the cave is trying to do is they're trying to set the cave up in such a way that it's hurtful to everybody involved. Or if they think maybe the one character is doing better than the other, they can hurt that player or help someone behind. Because once the cave has put out all the tiles, the cave will start collapsing a tile per turn. And if they collapse all the crystals, then the whole cave collapses and the cave player wins. Now the knight, their job and how they win the game is they have to kill the dragon. And so the dragon is wandering around in the cave, trying to avoid getting killed by the knight. And the knight can use a bomb to try to blow up walls or try to kill the dragon. The knight is going to start with 2 grit. And they're going to be getting grit. They're going to be keeping track of their grit as time goes by with another marker. And every time they get to one of these yellow cubes, they have that much more grit. And grit is going to be used to do different things. For example, I could pay 1 grit to move 1 tile, or I could pay 2 grit to move 3, or 3 grit to move 5, or 7. I can also have different encounters on the different tiles based on the number of grit. And I can use strength because I'm going to need a certain amount of strength to fight against the goblins who are trying to kill me and the dragon who I'm trying to kill. Or I can use them to go through walls on the ancient map. Or just different things that you get. And as the game goes by, you're going to find treasures. And if there is a dragon player, the dragon's going to pick the treasure cards for you. But these, like here, are +4 movement, and they have different spots on them for you to place your grit on also. The knight will also find events, and again, if there's a cave player, the cave player is going to be helping choose the events, which might be an ambush by goblins, or it might be something good. Again, the cave's going to try to make sure that it helps the knight or hurts the knight, depending on how well the knight is doing. So that's basically what the knight is going to be doing. They can go around and find treasures, because treasures are going to be helpful to the knight player to get more actions, but their main goal is hunting down that dragon and killing it. Then we have the dragon. Now the dragon is trying to not get killed by the knight. It's trying to eat goblins as the game goes by, and it has different tokens up here, which basically, if I drop this down by 2, let's say I eat 2 goblins, I drop it down, then I can get rid of one of these hunger cubes and bring it down here. And the more of these cubes I have down here, the stronger the dragon is, until there comes a point where the dragon will wake. At first you're slumbering and moving around, and eventually you're awake. When you're awake, you can bust out where one of the gem spots are. You can put these gems on the board. Of course, these gems can be stolen by other players, but they can also kill them. And then you got to get to the entrance, and if you do so, the dragon wins. The dragon just has to escape. And as the game goes by, the dragon's going to be drawing power cards. And these power cards have different symbols on them. And then the dragon has a whole bunch of different abilities that the dragon can do based on those. So you might be able to do a flame wall. You might be able to do scratch. You might be able to do a flame and affect other things. And so each of these is going to progress and give you different abilities that the dragon will play. So the dragon's trying to avoid the knight, eat goblins, and get to the entrance. The goblins can have up to 3 different war parties. These different symbols mean that. And each, the goblin player at the beginning of the turn, depending on where their rage is, and they will increase it, they're going to get to draw these cards, a certain number of these cards. And this is going to show how many goblins they'll be adding to each pile here on the board. So there's going to be a certain number of goblins that are going to be available for that tribe. And sometimes they also allow the goblin player to bring out a monster. So maybe they have a golem or maybe an ogre. And those monsters are going to be able to help. Like, for example, this tribe gets +1 strength. This tribe can go through walls. Or here's the blob. If this tribe uses the attack action against the knight also loses 5 grit. And so the goblin players are trying to ambush. There's a lot of tiles that are ambushed, and they're trying to move around, and they're trying to kill the knight. If the goblins kill the knight, then they will win. They're also trying to avoid getting eaten by the dragon and or getting killed by the knight. The knight can fight back against the goblins, but usually it's knight running from the goblins, chasing the dragon eating the goblins, running from the knight, and the goblins running from the dragon and chasing the knight. The thief is an undying thief, which means if he gets killed by the dragon, the goblins, or the knight, they come back to life. And they just keep coming back to life. Although, if you kill the thief, you will get some bonuses. The thief has some tokens that they'll use each turn. So maybe the thief will say, oh, I'm going to take some movement here. I'll take that stealth, and I'll take this thievery. So how many actions you have, how much you can avoid attacks from other people, and how far you can move. And you'll be able to move these around. And as the game goes by, you'll be able to upgrade these tokens so that they are better tokens. And you can, eventually you can get all of them to be equal to 4. And then the thief has all different things. What the thief is trying to do is they're trying to get both the treasure tokens and the crystals that the cave is going to be leaving around, and possibly from the dragon too. And they're trying to stash those. Once they stash a certain number of these treasure chests and crystals, they win. And they can go around and they can go through walls, and they're kind of not involved so much with this trio of dragon chasing goblins chasing knight chasing dragon. They can fight all of them, and they're just trying to mess with everyone. They're just trying to get in there and get out. And so they have different actions, and they'll get a certain number of action cubes and use those, and they can try to backstab somebody. And so they're kind of involved in all these different things that's going on. But if you play with a 5-player game, usually the thief is the one character you don't play with. So the thief wins by stashing stuff. Now, Vast is what we call an asymmetrical game, because each player plays differently. But I think with Vast, it's more asymmetrical than any other game I've ever played. Maybe. I think, like, the way each player plays isn't even a little the same.
No.
When you play the knight, you are sitting there thinking, okay, I have all these special abilities. How can I upgrade my special abilities? What am I going to do? I'm going to go search for treasure. When you play the thief, you're thinking about, how do I just stay out of everybody's way?
Yeah.
And get the treasure, and then use my special abilities, which are very different than the knight's, and they're even used differently. Like, you thought, how do you put those 3 numbers on, right? Mm-hmm. So how much movement you're going to have and things like that. If you play the cave, you're thinking, okay, oh, the knight looks like he's about to win, I better stop him. Oh, the dragon's getting stronger, I better stop him. And so you're kind of involved there. If you play the goblins, you're controlling 3 different tribes and trying to make sure that, you have monsters out there, get that knight where you can. And what's the 5th thing? Oh, the dragon. You're just trying to avoid that knight and go around and eat goblins. And I really enjoy it. Now, each of the different... there's a rule book, but there's also a page of rules for each of the different factions. So if Melody's playing the cave, I can be like, here. Now you know how to play the cave. Actually, it's not quite that simple. I gave you a quick overview of the rules, but do you think this game is not that simple to play?
It's kind of hard to catch on to in the beginning, but like after a while, when you get to know what you're doing, you're like, okay, you're like just focused on that, and so.
Right, you really don't have to remember the rules for everybody else. You learn your rules. And so you'll look at your sheet and say, okay, these are the things that I can do. You look at your board, and this is how I can play. And once you play yours, you're like, yeah, I got this. Well, you got how to play that character. Switching to a different character is a very different play experience. I have not even played all 5 of them yet. So far, the one I think I like the best is probably the first one I played, which is the Knight. I like the Knight. I like being able to upgrade and get cooler powers, and I like allocating the cubes out. Which one do you think is most interesting?
The one that I got to play was a thief, and I thought that was pretty cool how not only you're like my dad said, trying to get out of the way of the other players, but also like being prepared if they get in your way, like having some defense, but also at the same time like putting out the actions to see how far you want to move and stuff like that.
Yeah, so really the game is fairly heavy, intense rules. I mean, even though you only have to learn a part of them, you kind of have to learn how they all work in some way so you can kind of get how it goes. I don't know if any of them are stronger than the others, I mean, because it is asymmetrical thing, but you know what? If you think one of them is easier than the rest, you can easily put one of those cards in to make that one harder. It's kind of a nice balancing feature. What did you think of the artwork and components?
To me, the artwork, it just looked like kind of like a normal thing that you would find in most games. Like, not bad, but like not also like overly good kind of thing.
Right.
I liked how the board is like the guy or the person who plays the cave. He's the one who's kind of creating the board, and then later on collapsing it. But that was fun.
Yeah, I like the artwork too. My game came with different cardboard cutouts, and it came with the wooden pieces. I prefer to play with the wooden pieces if possible. I also liked how there's extra things in the game. There's different kinds of tiles you can add and things if you want to. The symbology seemed pretty easy. Sometimes I'd have to say, what are you doing? Like the dragon has a cool die that he can roll that shows different dots, and it shows which tiles he's affecting with his power, which is kind of a neat thing, but you do want to learn the size of that die. What do you think of this game? You enjoy it, not enjoy it? Where do you stand?
I thought this game was a lot of fun. It was cool, like having your own character to go out and like trying to figure out what you're doing and how you're affecting the gameplay. And I just thought it was a lot of fun. To me, it kind of felt like a role-playing game. Not exactly, but to me it felt like it because you're playing a character. It felt like kind of like a story, like trying to do your own thing. And that was a lot of fun to me. So.
Yeah, I really also enjoyed the game. I like the game because of its uniqueness. I like the game because, yeah, I mean, the draw is, you can be the cave, but that is cool. But you can also be a thief, which is very different than a paladin. It's not like we're the same except the thief steals and the paladin swings. No, and the paladin and the goblin, I just like how different it feels. And it's one of those games that I'm like, ooh, I'm intrigued to see more. And I think the theme is strong in this one. So this is definitely a game that I'm going to keep in my collection. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. Very enjoyable. What's your rating?
A 9.
A 9. That's even higher than me. Well, there you go. That's vast. Certainly one that's going to be going into our collection. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel.
And I'm Melody.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at DicetowerNetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.